I know you were thinking she must be a model, a fashion influencer, this middle-aged woman. Truth, I only play an influencer on television. Depending on the decade, the week, the moment in time, I play many different roles, whether it's a student, a teacher, an activist, an advocate, a cyclist, a mortgage broker, a grocer, an affordable housing developer, an anthropologist, or a community builder. Never want to say I'm an expert at any of these things or in any of these roles. Today, I choose to focus on my roles as neighbor, anthropologist, and community builder. Though there's been some debate, famed anthropologist Margaret Mead is credited with having a starkly different definition about a civilized society, a civilization, a community. Her male counterparts had defined a civilized society based on the advancement of its tools. Mead, however, didn't look at the tools in a civilized society. She looked at a heel femur, the evidence of a heel femur. A broken femur, the largest bone in the human body, renders us immobile and virtually helpless. A broken femur meant sure death from exposure to the elements or being devoured. A heel femur, on the other hand, meant that someone had pulled you to safety. Your continued existence mattered. I contend that as neighbors, as community builders, we fail to pull our neighbors to safety. There is a time and a need for a redefinition around community building, and there is a need for a great awakening. The Great Awakening was a revival meant to restore passion for religion when it had grown stale. It was the first experience for large numbers of people in the American colonies. And it is credited as being a big factor in contributing to the common American culture. The first Great Awakening took place before the nation was formed. And more than 100 years later, the country faced the Second Great Awakening as it grappled with the moral dilemma of slavery, the social upheaval of the war between the states, Reconstruction, and the racial terror of post-Reconstruction. Whether I have the ability to host a revival today or cause you to have a religious fervor is real questionable. But I hope to encourage you to have a personal introspection and a personal recommitment to building community. Since the last Great Awakening, with reckless abandon, we've forgotten about pulling our neighbors to safety. There is concrete evidence. When government, the private sector, and academia collude to tell us how to act and who to dispossess and label as red, there is need for a great awakening. When statisticians can predict the future imprisonment of our 8-year-olds, there is need for a great awakening. When our love of our personal vehicles and interstate commerce cause us to erect concrete walls, creating gulfs between neighbors, and cutting off access to the most basic needs, there's a need for a great awakening. When our neighbors who live a short 13 miles away from us live 13 years shorter because we treat food as a privilege, there is a need for a great awakening. When we establish or develop 36 units of affordable housing for every 100 households, there's a need for a great awakening. There is an absolute neglect on our part, and we are all complicit, but there is hope. There is hope. Recently, I had the occasion to attend the California Urban Wood Conference. Yeah, a wood conference. So I hung out with foresters, and one of my favorite words now is agronomists. They were pretty smart people talking about the reuse of urban wood, green lumber, those type of things, invasive species. I learned a lot about the emerald ash borer, and I can tell you more about that later. But there was one scientist that said something that struck me. It was an aha moment for me. He talked about regenerative versus sustainable. And regenerative is a very hard word to say. Sustainable practices seek to maintain systems without degrading them, where regenerative practices look at how natural systems operate and they want to improve in productivity. So it's not maintenance without degradation, it's improvement, improved productivity. I said, that's it. In community development, we always talk about sustainable communities. We should be talking about a harder word to say, regenerative communities. We have an opportunity to get it right. Beyond the philosophical, what are the practical applications? And I promise not to bore you with exact recommendations. I'll have to mention the undoing of racist zoning regulations and pouring in subsidies to affordable housing to stave this crisis. But I won't bore you anymore. A few years ago, I was asked to be a guest lecturer in a course called Faith and Community Development. And as a good student, I did some research about how faith traditions define community. I found something in the Judaic text, the ancient Judaic text. It said the scholar cannot live in a place that doesn't have 10 basic things. Those things included stuff like bloodletters. We won't really talk about that today. The law court, financial systems, food systems like the butcher and the baker, a sewer system, public amenities. So in the Jewish text, in the Jewish tradition, community members or the scholar cannot live in a place that doesn't meet all of his spiritual, or he or she, spiritual and physical needs. That's the principle we need to apply. All communities should meet the needs of all of its members' spiritual and physical needs. I like to suggest something that is very simple that we can apply. It's the golden rule, simple. Do unto others as we would have them do unto us, and build communities that meet all of its members' needs. I like to end with the motto of the organization that I lead. It's also scriptural, and I forgot to say that I play a preacher on TV. It's taken from the words of the prophet Isaiah. We will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. We will renew the cities that have been devastated for generations. In a revivalist fashion, using regenerative practices, I bid each of you, all of us who are complicit in not pulling our neighbors to safety for healing, to rebuild, restore, and renew. Thank you.